Chairman. Let me change tacks here a little bit if I can. Mr. DeMarco, I want to ask you about principal reductions. That will be no surprise to you, coming from our many previous discussions. But first I want to share with you some comments. Neil Borofsky, who is the former Special Inspector General for the TARP program, I quote him, "There needs to be a recognition that many borrowers will never make the required payments on their underwater mortgages, and that the owners of these mortgages have already lost any meaningful chance of obtaining a full recovery of the outstanding principal. The sooner that this reality is recognized and addressed, the sooner a recovery can take hold. As such, an aggressive principal reduction program is necessary." Alan Binder, the former Vice Chair of the Federal Reserve Act, said most economists see principal reductions as central to preventing foreclosures. Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve Chairman, said in this environment, principal reductions that restore some equity for the homeowner may be a relatively more effective means of avoiding delinquency and foreclosure. Mark Zandi, Chief Economist for Moody's Analytics, said a weaker than anticipated housing market poses a serious threat to the economic expansion. He suggests a policy step with one of the best odds of ending the housing crash quickly and definitively would have the government facilitate loan modifications with substantial principal write-downs. Now, when Congress passed the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, we directed FHFA, Freddie, and Fannie to implement a plan that seeks to maximize the system for homeowners. We've been through the language on that, but it does talk about having the mortgage services, encouraging services to take advantage of programs to minimize foreclosures. There's nothing in the law, and we shared this before, that I see, and that anybody else advises sees, that it prevents you from approving a program to reduce principal if it's in the taxpayer's interest. Now, Fannie Mae's second quarter credit supplement says the average return to Fannie Mae this year on foreclosed properties is 55% of unpaid principal balance. So you're going to lose 45% of any foreclosed property. And if that's the case, but you'd only lose 5%, say, of a principal reduction program, why not reduce the principal and keep the borrower in his or her home?
We have been through the analytics of the underwater borrowers at Fannie and Freddie and looked at the alternative foreclosure alternative programs that are available, Mr. Tierney, and we have concluded that the use of a principal reduction within the context of a loan modification is not going to be the least cost approach for the taxpayer to allow this homeowner an opportunity to stay in their home. We are using aggressively loan modification activities that include principal forbearance, which will zero out the interest rate charged on the underwater portion of the mortgage without forgiving the debt of the mortgage. And this is all designed to get the borrower into an affordable monthly payment so that they can continue in their home. And that has been the basic calculus that has guided this decision. As I've said before, I do not believe that I've been appropriated taxpayer funds for the purpose of providing this more general support to the housing market. We're supposed to undertake our loss mitigation activities with regard to the cost to the taxpayer.
But you have been empowered as conservator to have the fiduciary responsibility of maximizing the value of the taxpayer's assets. And if it's less costly to modify the principal and modify the loan than it is to go to foreclosure, I would think you'd be breaking that fiduciary responsibility. What you're telling me flies in the face of Neil Borofsky, Alan Blinder, Ben Bernanke, Mark Zandi, and all these people. You just come up with a different idea, and maybe you would share with us your calculations so we could run it by some of these other people who see it quite differently than you do. Several of the banks are already doing principal reductions right now. You have an example of Ocwen, which is a program under where the servicer reduces the loans to 95% of the homeowner's fair market value. The excess principal is forgiven over 3 years as long as the homeowner remains current. When the home is sold or refinanced, the borrower is required to pay 25% of the appreciated value and share that with Ocwen. According to the company's CEO, shared appreciation modifications help homeowners avoid foreclosure and restore equity, providing a significant benefit to the customer, the economy, and the housing market. Now, they're not doing that to be nice. You know that. It's in their financial self-interest, and I still don't think you've made a compelling argument why it's not in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the taxpayers' financial self-interest to do that. J.P. Morgan Chase is doing it, Ally Financial, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. They've reduced an average of $51,000 off the balance of about 73,000 borrowers in 2009 and 2010. Is everybody else wrong, Mr. DeMarco, and FHFA is right in this?
I believe, Congressman, I believe that the decisions that we've made with regard to principal forgiveness are consistent with our statutory mandate. I do believe we are taking all due effort to provide assistance to homeowners, and I do not believe I've been authorized to use taxpayer money for a general program of principal forgiveness.
Mr. Chairman, if just be a unanimous consent for 30 more seconds. Mr. DeMarco, I'd like you to do two things for the committee, if you would.
Okay.
First, I want you to identify anywhere in the statute that specifically prohibits you from developing principal reduction programs, because as I read the law, you don't have the authority to do that. So if you would do that and then share that with the committee and me. Second, I'd like you to submit whatever analysis you have done that shows why reducing the principal of some mortgages is worse for the United States taxpayer than foreclosure. If you provide that analysis that you talked about, I'd appreciate it. Will you do that for us?
We can provide information as you suggested, Congressman.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Farenthold from